A bank fraud. Rudyard Kipling. He drank strong waters and his speech was coarse. He purchased raiment and forbore to pay. He struck a trusting junior with a horse, and won gymkhanas in a doubtful way. Then, twixt a vice and folly, turned aside. To do good deeds and straight to cloak them, lied. The mess room. If Reggie Burke were in India now, he would resent this tale being told, but as he is in Hong Kong and won't see it, the telling is safe. He was the man who worked the big fraud on the Sindh and Sialkot Bank. He was manager of an up-country branch, and a sound practical man with a large experience of native loan and insurance work. He could combine the frivolities of ordinary life with his work, and yet do well. Reggie Burke rode anything that would let him get up, danced as neatly as he rode, and was wanted for every sort of amusement in the station. As he said himself, and as many men found out rather to their surprise, there were two Burkes, both very much at your service. Reggie Burke, between 4 and 10, ready for anything from a hot weather gymkhana to a riding picnic. And, between 10 and 4, Mr. Reginald Burke, manager of the Sindh and Sialkot Branch Bank. You might play polo with him one afternoon and hear him express his opinions when a man crossed, and you might call on him next morning to raise a 2,000 rupee loan on a £500 insurance policy, £80 paid in premiums. He would recognize you, but you would have some trouble in recognizing him. The directors of the bank had its headquarters in Calcutta and its general manager's word carried weight with the government picked their men well. They had tested Reggie up to a fairly severe breaking dash strain. They trusted him just as much as directors ever trust managers. You must see for yourself whether their trust was misplaced. Reggie's branch was in a big station, and worked with the usual staff. One manager, one accountant, both English, a cashier, and a horde of native clerks, besides the police patrol at nights outside. The bulk of its work, for it was in a thriving district, was hundi and accommodation of all kinds. A fool has no grip of this sort of business, and a clever man who does not go about among his clients, and know more than a little of their affairs, is worse than a fool. Reggie was young-looking, clean-shaved, with a twinkle in his eye, and a head that nothing short of a gallon of the gunner's Madeira could make any impression on. One day, at a big dinner, he announced casually that the directors had shifted onto him a natural curiosity, from England, in the accountant line. He was perfectly correct. Mr. Silas Riley, accountant, was a most curious animal, a long, gawky, raw-boned Yorkshireman, full of the savage self-conceit that blossoms only in the best county in England. Arrogance was a mild word for the mental attitude of Mr. S. Riley. He had worked himself up, after 7 years, to a cashier's position in a Huddersfield bank, and all his experience lay among the factories of the North. Perhaps he would have done better on the Bombay side, where they are happy with 0.5% profits, and money is cheap. He was useless for Upper India and a wheat province, where a man wants a large head and a touch of imagination if he is to turn out a satisfactory balance sheet. He was wonderfully narrow-minded in business, and, being new to the country, had no notion that Indian banking is totally distinct from home work. Like most clever self-made men, he had much simplicity in his nature, and, somehow or other, had construed the ordinarily polite terms of his letter of engagement into a belief that the directors had chosen him on account of his special and brilliant talents, and that they set great store by him. This notion grew and crystallized, thus adding to his natural North Country conceit. Further, he was delicate, suffered from some trouble in his chest, and was short in his temper. You will admit that Reggie had reason to call his new accountant a natural curiosity. The two men failed to hit it off at all. Riley considered Reggie a wild, feather-headed idiot, given to heaven only knew what dissipation in low places called messes, and totally unfit for the serious and solemn vocation of banking. He could never get over Reggie's look of youth and you-be-damned air, and he couldn't understand Reggie's friends clean-built, careless men in the army who rode over to big Sunday breakfasts at the bank, and told sultry stories till Riley got up and left the room. Riley was always showing Reggie how the business ought to be conducted, and Reggie had more than once to remind him that 7 years' limited experience between Huddersfield and Beverley did not qualify a man to steer a big up-country business. Then Riley sulked and referred to himself as a pillar of the bank and a cherished friend of the directors, and Reggie tore his hair. If a man's English subordinates fail him in this country, he comes to a hard time indeed, for native help has strict limitations. In the winter Riley went sick for weeks at a time with his lung complaint, and this threw more work on Reggie. But he preferred it to the everlasting friction when Riley was well. One of the traveling inspectors of the bank discovered these collapses and reported them to the directors. Now Riley had been foisted on the bank by an MP, who wanted the support of Riley's father, who, again, was anxious to get his son out to a warmer climate because of those lungs. The MP had an interest in the bank, but one of the directors wanted to advance a nominee of his own, and, after Riley's father had died, he made the rest of the board see that an accountant who was sick for half the year had better give place to a healthy man. If Riley had known the real story of his appointment, he might have behaved better, but knowing nothing, his stretches of sickness alternated with restless, persistent, meddling irritation of Reggie, and all the 100 ways in which conceit in a subordinate situation can find play. Reggie used to call him striking and hair-curling names behind his back as a relief to his own feelings, but he never abused him to his face. Because he said, Riley is such a frail beast that half of his loathsome conceit is due to pains in the chest. Late one April, Riley went very sick indeed. The doctor punched him and thumped him, and told him he would be better before long. Then the doctor went to Reggie and said, "Do you know how sick your accountant is?" "No," said Reggie, "the worse the better, confound him. He's a clacking nuisance when he's well. I'll let you take away the bank safe if you can drug him silent for this hot weather." But the doctor did not laugh / "Man, I'm not joking," he said. "I'll give him another 3 months in his bed and a week or so more to die in. On my honor and reputation, that's all the grace he has in this world. Consumption has hold of him to the marrow." Reggie's face changed at once into the face of Mr. Reginald Burke, and he answered, "What can I do?" "Nothing," said the doctor. "For all practical purposes the man is dead already. Keep him quiet and cheerful and tell him he's going to recover. That's all. I'll look after him to the end, of course." The doctor went away, and Reggie sat down to open the evening mail. His first letter was one from the directors, intimating for his information that Mr. Riley was to resign, under a month's notice, by the terms of his agreement. Telling Reggie that their letter to Riley would follow and advising Reggie of the coming of a new accountant, a man whom Reggie knew and liked. Reggie lit a cheroot, and, before he had finished smoking, he had sketched the outline of a fraud. He put away, Burke, the director's letter, and went in to talk to Riley, who was as ungracious as usual, and fretting himself over the way the bank would run during his illness. He never thought of the extra work on.
Thanks for being a part of Chronicles Corner. I hope you enjoyed the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for future updates. Goodbye.